Hey, hey guys, it's snowing like crazy out here, so I'm just gonna hold you up. No video today, but you're gonna get the audio anyway. Into my pocket, into my pocket, into my pocket you go. Oh yeah, it's kind of magical out actually, in a way. Just don't want to get my phone all snowed on while I walk home. What's been banging around in my head today? Slow day today. Snow has made things real slow. Not that I mind, right? Like a little slow, a little snow slow. What the heck, let's do it. We'll slow things down a little bit around here. People work too hard, people move too fast, everything goes too quickly. I feel like we should intentionally and purposefully slow things down, make things a little bit calmer around here. I don't see any reason why we're in such a rush to get to where we're gonna go. I'm not interested in busy work. I'm not interested in that kind of stuff. Like, people need to slow down. People need to calm down a little bit. That's part of the thing with these blockades, and part of the thing with shutting down the distribution network a little bit. Like people on the hard right who, defend some pretty reprehensible things, they immediately plunge into like, oh, this is going to mean that people who live in rural communities are going to be stranded. It's like, no, dude, it means people are going to get less LOL dolls. Like, it means people are going to get less of this sort of like junk commodities that are superfluous, right? No, nobody is in an emergency. There's no ridiculous kind of thing going on. There's no food shortages. There's no fuel shortages, right? These blockades are preventing toys and knickknacks and like all of that kind of garbage from getting into the market as fast as it possibly can, and near as I can tell, what the consumer base is doing is they're just going, oh, I can't get that item, I'll get this item instead, right? They're just moving on to something else, which is exactly what's going to happen at the end of the day with all this heat stamping and crying and whining that's going on the far right about how this is the destruction of capitalism and all of this nonsense. Like, let's say this system collapsed and got overthrown and all of that. It would be like a month. It would be a month, and people would just move on and just get on with their lives and do something new or do something different, or do the thing they're currently doing with small, slight alterations. Like, it's so ridiculous that we're facing like the literal end of the world through climate change, but the people who are against actually doing something to face this existential crisis are acting like doing so is itself the end of the world. It's just getting to be asinine. Now, what's scary, the scary thing that's come out of all of this is that it looks like Canada, while people are doing what they need to do in order to stand up and actually protect the environment, and that's what these blockades are about. There is a land rights issue buried underneath, and the First Nations people are using those land rights issues as leverage in order to drive towards the actual point of this, which is that this is a environmental crisis, that there's a climate emergency going on. It's been declared, not that anything serious is being done about it. And so the First Nations people are using their land rights in order to form blockades, in order to gum up the works. And they're giving you a taste of what the quote-unquote capitalist class, or as I like to call them, the fascists, are willing to do in order to protect the destruction of the civil society, which is exactly what they're heading towards and arguing in favor of. Climate change is going to be a disaster. It's going to be a real disaster. and it's a serious problem. If it was a military force, and these people on the far right were doing everything they could to ignore it, pay no attention to it, and in many cases strengthen the military force that was invading us, we would call them traitors. We would treat them as traitors and treasonous. We would banish them from our society. But we have this kind of mental constipation going on. We have this inability to sort of understand that because it's a natural force, because it's the earth itself that has told us explicitly, if you continue acting in this way, you will light your place on fire. We've seen it happen. We understand that that's what's going to happen. It is undeniable at this point, unless you're in bed with the oil industry or you're delusional. And so the people who are in charge denying this, i.e. the conservatives, we're talking about Doug Ford, we're talking about Jason Kenney, we're talking about Ryan Pallister, I think you can pretty cleanly call eco-fascists. These people deny the reality of the crisis that they're in. They don't care to do anything about it. What they care about doing is ramping up a hysteria amongst the populace against the forces that are fighting back against them. So if you're an anti-fascist, Antifa, or if you're a socialist, just today I saw a corporate news article that was saying that the socialists are pretending as though they care about the land rights issues, that they care about the climate change issues, but really they're just using it as a cover because their true objective is the destruction of capitalism. This, of course, is McCarthy-ish Red Scare propaganda. And the truth of it is, I am completely fine, as is any socialist I've ever met, would be completely fine if capitalism could actually solve this problem. But the issue is that capitalism is incapable of solving the problem, obviously. It would have done so if it could solve it, it would have done it. But it can't, and it won't, and it's not willing to. And so, because of the blockades and because of the way this is going, the conservatives, instead of listening to the populace, instead of paying attention to what's going on in terms of the environment, instead of believing evidence and believing facts and paying any attention to science whatsoever, they're choosing the path of fascism. So you're going to end up with strong alliances between corporations and governments. Kenny, for example, in Alberta, is outright stating that he is just going to buy sections of the oil industry to continue propping them up in order to continue the pollution, to continue the destruction of the ecosystem, in order to make things worse and ramp things along. This is a type of fascism, this eco-fascism, that simply does not care about human life. And what's really scary is that you can take a look at any stats you want. You can put forward any argument you want. But the reality is that the conservatives have stood up and have declared their allegiance to fascism by saying that we should go onto First Nations land, we should clear these First Nations blockades away on their own land, we should commit to the path of full fascism, mask off. This is Andrew Scheer, this is Peter MacKay, they both hold this position, they're open about it, it's not a secret. It's full-on fascism. We should go in and just destroy these blockades on land that is not Canadian, where we have no jurisdiction. And we should assault the First Nations people in order to fulfill our desire of continuing the destruction of the human species. This is their position. This is what they say they want to do. And so, while they're saying this, while they're pledging allegiance to this sort of death cultish desire to destroy everything around them. The First Nations people are fighting as hard as they can. And while the Conservatives are making these claims, their approval rating has gone up. This is terrifying. You can look at any statistic you want, but if fascists stand up and start making fascist statements and their approval rating goes up, we should be deeply terrified of that. We should be deeply afraid that should this continue, and should the Conservatives realize that, oh, when we stand up and make fascist statements, that our approval goes up, should they continue to make bolder and more insane fascist proclamations, as they will, their approval rating goes up. The feedback loop on this is a disaster for Canada and for the rest of the globe. That while we are all attempting to resolve this deep crisis that is going to have major implications on our society, we're simultaneously going to be fighting against a fascist government that is doing everything it can to punish people, to dismantle any institution that stands against their desire to destroy Canada, which is their objective. Not only Canada, but any semblance of human organization that can be done on the planet. And I don't believe for a second that anything I'm saying here is hyperbolic. This is a legitimate threat that we're facing. It's the largest existential threat of our lifetime, and we are not taking it seriously. Instead, we're using limp cowards who are completely complicit and not interested in standing up against fascists at all in the Liberal Party. The Liberals are just these lazy, laissez-faire, well-educated propagandists who understand how to manipulate the populace, who understand how to get their guy to look good, right? Like, this is why they take pictures of him doing yoga. This is why they take pictures of him going to climate change rallies. This is why they put a beard on him after the blackface scandal. This is why they're doing everything they can to make him look and appear as a statesman, when at the end of the day, he's just a drama teacher who reads lines they give him from a cue card, and he goes where they tell him to go. He's not a leader. He's just a face that they're putting in front of you so that they can maintain their prestige and their power, so they can go to fancy dinners, so they can swirl wine around and laugh with their friends, maybe talk about some issues here and there, but in the end, do nothing real of consequence. Put a 1% tax on on the wealthiest people, and then give the money they tax away from the wealthy people right back to the wealthy people, like they did with Galen Weston. So the tax ends up helping no one whatsoever. It's this incredibly frustrating political situation to be in, where on the far right you have a cresting wave of fascism, overt, mask off, not pretending to be anything other than totally fascist, completely in bed with corporate power, completely merged with corporate power, not interested in helping the poor. In fact, arguing in favor and saying it's the responsible thing to assault the poor, to assault the vulnerable, to do massive harm to these groups, and absolutely destroy any kind of civil society that has been fought for in the last 100 years in order to funnel that money into a class of worthless middlemen and billionaires. And then in the quote-unquote center of that, from my perspective, they're actually moderate right-wingers, is the Liberal Party, who is not going to help you, who at best is just going to be a band-aid on the gaping, gushing wound. And then you go slightly further to the left, and you actually do have a group of moderate left-wingers. And they are moderate left-wingers in the NDP. But the NDP seems extremely weak. Here in Ontario, the NDP is just non-existent as our province is being ground away by a complete fascist who has absolutely no moral compass or any concern for anyone but himself. And then Jagmeet Singh seems silent, seems completely erased from any kind of media presence whatsoever, which, as the media has been captured by corporate culture and as the media publishes arguments against socialism written by a hard-right fascist, it's hardly surprising that they would completely silence the NDP as well. We have to stand up and we have to fight against these people. We have to strengthen the blockades. We have to continue fighting against these people because their argument is that we should destroy the civil society in order to make temporary money for a class of billionaires who will abandon you the second that they can. I'm home. Well, keep fighting the good fight. I love you all. Have fun out there.